I honestly don't believe there's such a thing as an absolutely perfect game. And even if I'm naturally very generous when it comes to rating a game, I'd like to go a little bit lower than that. So in today's video, I picked 9 games that I personally rated 9 out of 10. They sort of border the line between near perfect and in some strange instances might also be considered overrated by some. But that's not for me to decide. Fun factor is the most important for me and how memorable of a game it was beyond the full completion. I also factor in achievements and trophies when rating games I played, although it's obviously not the most important. Considering that I essentially try to platinum every game that I can, I feel that I also get to see most sides a developer would like gamers to experience, for better or for worse. The games in today's list are thankfully all backwards compatible and fully playable on your Xbox Series X, but at the same time, they're not exclusive to the Xbox 360. So let's check out the games. And for the first game, let's go straight to hell, because that's the only place where we can play this game. And that's Dante's Inferno. And this is by Visceral, and it came out in 2010. So it was actually during a time where I would say EA was publishing a lot of really good games. They may have been Mr. Microtransaction all around, and they were admitting to all the microtransactions, and that's what they were pushing. But you know, they had some real gems in there too, and not to mention this game, but they also had obviously the Dead Space games as well, which was by Visceral as well. So there's that one. I really love the cover on this one. Really cool art and really awesome. And PS3 had a slightly different edition of this one. I think it was called the Divine Edition. We don't have that one in the collection, but definitely one I'm constantly looking for when we go game hunting. So like I said, I played Dead Space, and I was really looking for something different to play. And I knew after looking at these games, and I went to a GameStop, just kind of looking around, and I recognized Visceral Games as the creators of Dead Space, of course. And so I kind of automatically thought that this game must be good, but I could clearly tell it was a little bit different. And up until that point, I hadn't played a lot of hack and slash games really, and the most obvious comparison to this game is God of War, and obviously some Devil May Cry as well. But mostly I would say God of War, but I hadn't played any of those. So for me, this was a breath of fresh air. Like, I didn't really know what to expect. It's obviously a very graphic game. It's very violent. So you are obviously in hell, like I said in the beginning, and you are fighting your way through the 9 circles of hell. This really has an amazing story. The sound is remarkable as well, and the atmosphere is amazing. Like I said, I didn't really know what to expect going into this game, but I still remember this game very fondly. Just very memorable enemy design as well, and there were quite a few boss fights in this game as well, and you know, kind of the typical arena style fights to progress, and some platforming, and you know, there's some nudity and everything, so you know, you are in hell after all, so what do you expect, I guess. So but overall, like, a great story mode. Just playing through this one, and even the little I played just to capture some gameplay, I felt the game again, and I really wanted to dive into it more. And there was also like a story DLC in this one. Literally, you're just walking into a kind of like a foresty maze, and you know, it wasn't worth whatever it was, $5-10 for that one. But you know, it's typical EA at the time. Unfortunately, they made a lot of good games, but they ruined them with microtransactions, unfortunately. There was like a Trials of St. Lucia DLC that had trials and some co-op you had to do there as well for the 100% and the platinum. So not as fun. I didn't enjoy that as much. There were some trials there, especially the co-op ones, I think, that were a little bit painful. Besides the DLC and everything, this is an incredible game, and I gave it a 9 out of 10 for a reason, and should not be missed. So if you have not played Dante's Inferno, this one should be at the top of your list. And the next game is a game part of one of my favorite franchises, series, whatever you want to call it. And this is Hitman Absolution. And this is by IO Interactive, and it was released in 2012. I waited a long time for the next Hitman game. And this one, to me at least at first, I pre-ordered this one, day one purchase, did not disappoint one bit. It was very different from the older Hitman games. I think at the time it was trying to be more of like a blockbuster game. And I don't know if it was because of Warner Brothers, Square Enix, what they were trying to do. They did have a lot of kind of more mainstream franchises at the time that they had purchased. Like half of Hollywood is in this game, I think, voice acting, and that's a good thing. Like, and they did a tremendous job with this game. It felt a little bit more fast-paced, of course, because when you play the older Hitman games, for again, for better or worse, like I know some people have a hard time getting into the older Hitman games, and I understand that because it's a lot of trial and error, and you can't really make a lot of mistakes before you get discovered or your disguise is blown, and then you have to kind of fight your way through, which isn't as much fun as being stealthy, of course. Like, all of these games are always going to be centered around stealth, and here they try to make this game a little bit more accessible. I feel not so much trying to make it a third-person shooter, but you kind of have this point shooting system, and you could use instinct and everything to kind of, disguise yourself. Even if you didn't have a disguise, you kind of like put your hand over your face kind of thing and walk by enemies and everything. And yeah, it felt a little bit more blockbustery in a sense, but that's not necessarily a bad thing in this case. It really laid the foundation for future games, which if you played Hitman 1, 2, and 3, and now it's like World of Assassination or whatever, this game really laid the foundation for that. Like, they definitely tried something new, and I appreciate that. It may not have gotten a top score from every reviewer and fan of the series in general, but I actually gave this game, at the time at least, and this was in 2012, I gave it a 10 out of 10 at first, but then I played this on the Xbox One, or I guess it was fairly recent on the Series X. I played the HD port, and I actually lowered my score a little bit. And it's not so much that like I didn't like the game, but I didn't feel like it was a perfect 10 because I'd now played Hitman 1, 2, and 3 on the newer consoles, and I'm like, that's probably more of a 10 out of 10 than this game is. So, it's just kind of with the Hitman Blood Money as well. Like, that's probably closer to a 10 out of 10 than this game. However, I still feel like this one is up there. Like 9 out of 10, I think, is an appropriate score for this game, just because they tried something new. It has a really good flow to it. Every level, as you would expect from a Hitman game, is just almost flawless. Like, there are some sections that aren't that great because you look around and kind of the only way out is to shoot your way out of that situation. Which I'm not a big fan of in these games where they kind of force you to do it. It should be your choice because, it's a sandbox style game, and that's kind of how I like to play it as well. It's like 90% stealth, and then I leave 10% to chance and try to sneak my way out of it, and if it's not too much chaos, then the better it is. You will truly appreciate what they were doing in this game and how they were moving the story along too, with the missions that came one after another. I think it was a really good structure to the game, and yeah, more action than you would expect from a Hitman game, but they toned it down in the newer games, and that's, thanks to this game really, for trying first and then letting the new ones succeed as well as they did. Let's move on to the next game, and that is Rage. And Rage was released in 2011 and was developed by id Software, from the creators of Doom and Quake. And that's exactly why I bought this game. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember the times where back in the day you'd go to a game store and you're like, oh, from the creators of Doom and Quake, that sounds cool, I should buy this. Instead of spending hours watching videos until your brain is numb, and then you don't even make your own decisions anymore on if you really want to get the game or not. So that was one of those games for me. Like, I think it just influenced kind of the score for me as well, right? Because you're more in the moment, you're surprised, and then it actually is a good game. And this one has about, I think, 9 discs on the 360. No, I'm just kidding. It's got 3 discs, but if you're a PlayStation gamer, you know that this was probably 1 disc. And then looking at this one with the 3 discs, I think it was, yeah, you had the disc swap for sure. when you're playing on the 360. Thankfully, if you play it on the Xbox Series X, you don't have to worry about that. It might still pop up on the screen though, which is kind of funny. If you try to play like multiplayer or second part of the game, it'll say please insert disc 2 or 3 or whatever it is. So I mean, I have to admit, I don't really miss those times. It's you know, you can say, oh, you have to swap a disc out or whatever, but it's not that much fun if you're in the middle of like a fight scene or whatever you're doing, right? It's just not like I'm gonna get up and swap my discs out, right? So thankfully you don't have to do that on the Series X because it's all emulated and all good stuff. So I think this one surprised me because obviously I've been a big fan of Doom and not so much Quake, really. I never really played Quake that much. After playing this game, which is more of a, it's obviously a post-apocalyptic setting on this one, and at first you might think that it is kind of like an open world, but it is sort of more of a linear open world, which is really more my style, I would say. Like, so if you're not a big fan of like all these big cities and big areas that you have to explore, this game has like zones that you can kind of free roam a little bit, and you have like a buggy that you can drive around on, and you also have like a combat vehicle. So I think there's just enough. You know, if you compare something like this to Mad Max, you know, that came out on Xbox One and PS4, this one's definitely a lot more linear than that one. So they're both really good games though. I really enjoyed both of them. But as you can imagine here too, with id Software, I mean, the weapons in this game are incredible. Like, the sound design, I think, is a real standout. And again, as you would expect from them. And not to mention kind of the star of the show, like the wing stick. I think the wing stick just never gets old. I love using that weapon. It actually, I think it might be a one-hit kill with that. So yeah, it's a great gadget. Something else I wanted to mention too about this game, which I thought was really interesting at the time I played it, 2 years after the game came out, like DLC was released for this game, which was like, what the, you know, and it was like, I think it was like $5, but it was fun. It just added a couple more missions, I think, to it. Yeah, it was just more stuff to play. And yeah, I thought this game was very enjoyable from start to finish. It was a little bit of an abrupt ending to this game. And since I haven't played Rage 2 yet, I don't know if it continues the story or if it's like a brand new thing. But I know that it is more open world. Actually, no, I have played a little bit of Rage 2, but I just haven't started the game. So yeah, so I can kind of visualize it now. It's very much like Mad Max, really. And then you just kind of, yeah, you have a vehicle there too and drive around, do missions and side missions and stuff. So, and this game also has like online, offline co-op that you can play as well with, I think it's one other person. So that's fun for a few hours here and there, you know, just play some Wasteland Legends and do some online racing challenges like Road Rage and stuff. So yeah, it did have some different game modes and stuff. So I would definitely, if you're not like a huge fan of like massive open world games, but you still want that post-apocalyptic wasteland and lots of amazing guns and everything, then this might be the game for you. And then for the next one here, let's check out everyone's favorite, Rockstar. No, of course, it's Max Payne 3, which was made by Rockstar in this case, not Remedy this time. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had played Max Payne in the past on PC and OG Xbox, I might not have picked this game up at all. And boy, am I glad I did, because this game is something else. And this is my copy too. Like, I never got rid of this one. This is my, again, GameStop copy and pre-order and everything. 2 discs, which is, you know, I'll get to that. It's a little bit risky in some sections, but yeah, you have to disc swap. And then, so single player disc 1 and multiplayer, and single player disc 2. So yeah, it's a little bit interesting. So, but yeah, what can I say about Max Payne 3 that hasn't been said already? Like I said, I played Max Payne 1 and 2, and in terms of Rockstar, I probably played Manhunt. No, I hadn't played Red Dead at that point either, so it was like a little hodgepodge of things that was going on here. So I had actually very low expectations of this game going into it. So and immediately though, I could feel that it wasn't the same type of gameplay as Max Payne 1 and 2. At which later I learned that this is kind of the typical, more stiff, realistic Rockstar type of gameplay. And it's not to say that it wasn't good. It's still fantastic. You know, like it was still played really well. Still had the same voice actor. Later times when I went back to replay this, you know, it did start feeling more like a Rockstar game after having played more GTA and more modern GTA, and then also, of course, Red Dead Redemption. You know, that's just interesting with this one too, because you feel like in the older Max Payne games, Max Payne is more agile. Like when he does the bullet time and maybe jumps midair and then lands, he kind of gets up a little bit faster. In this one, I mean, he's older, so it's kind of like it's very risky to do that move because he's just kind of like a sack of potatoes that just fall to the ground and kind of rolls around awkwardly. You can do that and keep shooting, but my god, I can't tell you countless times I've been just slaughtered in the middle of a dance floor or whatever it is. But you know, it's, you get used to it. I still think it is just more safe to use just bullet time and then just kind of pop in and out of cover and everything. So I think the one-liners, and maybe that's the multiplayer, maybe that's where it was used a lot more, but the one-liners in this game are epic. I mean, absolutely, there's just no comparison. They did tack on quite a bit of playthroughs, and especially if you are trophy hunting, achievement hunting in this game, you know that this one is a real test. You know, this has one of the most difficult achievements with Shadows Rushed Me, which is New York Minute Hardcore. And that means you have to go through the entire game without dying, and you also have a time limit. So you gain that time by killing enemies and stuff. So it is a very interesting one. I've done New York Minute. I've never gotten as far as New York Minute Hardcore. It's the only achievement I have left. That's like that elusive 10 gamer score that I still need. But I still plan on doing it one day. It is like one of the ultimate achievements to get. And you know, when I feel ready for it, then I'll train up for it and get good at the game again and attempt it in one sitting. And then also going back to the multiplayer, I thought the multiplayer was okay in this one. I found myself jumping into multiplayer since I played it at launch. It was pretty well populated. I think it was you know, a very popular game, and since it was Rockstar, so I think it just kind of brought that with it as well. And, you know, sadly now it's been shut down, and so you can't really play, you can't play multiplayer at all. And there was a lot of DLC attached to this game too that had multiplayer achievements and everything, so you unfortunately can't buy or play that again either. But it was kind of funny, just thinking back on those memories of Xbox 360 lobbies and certain games, you know, and maybe that's one game you wouldn't expect to have a half-decent multiplayer at least. If you played a little bit later, a couple of years after, you would still find a bunch of tryhards, you know? Like, it was kind of interesting to just jump in a lobby and play with people who had been there for like 5+ years and just kind of like got really good at Max Payne 3 in multiplayer. So that's really funny. But I think this is one of the best third-person shooters on the Xbox 360. I was very close to giving this one a 10 out of 10. Maybe if Remedy had made this game, who knows, it might just have been a 10 out of 10. So let's change it up a little bit now and go to some of the best humor out there, really. But you could say it's kind of childish too. So, but really good. Been a fan of the show for a long time. And that is South Park, The Stick of Truth. And this game came out in 2014. So it was a bit of a late bloomer on the Xbox 360. But again, it's one of those games, and this was published by Ubisoft, but it was made by everyone's favorite RPG maker, Obsidian, of course. This one, I thought it had a manual, but I guess not. Like, I mean, this was kind of very late in the Xbox 360's life. Not that it's not still alive, but you know what I mean. So it's, I think in Canada, they may have had a manual for this game. I'm not quite sure, but I think I bought one edition where the Canadian one. That kind of seems to happen with a lot of Ubisoft games, that even if it's not a full-fledged manual, at least they get like a pamphlet or something, like, you know, at least artwork of some sort inside. I think I had that on Watch Dogs as well. It was kind of like a Canadian edition. So yeah, South Park, The Stick of Truth. I'm not surprised it's on this list and it's so highly rated by myself and a lot of other people as well. It took me a while though, I have to admit, it took me a while. I'm a big fan of the show. I don't really watch it that much anymore, but there were like years and years where I always made sure to watch South Park. It's great though. It's kind of the greatest hits of all the South Park episodes and even probably the movie as well. But But there's a lot of recurring characters, a lot of returning characters. You make your own character in this game like you do in a lot of RPGs, so you can kind of customize how you look. Your character doesn't say a thing throughout the entire game, which is funny. It kind of reminds me of later on you had Turnip Boy. If you played Turnip Boy, like he just kind of walks around in this whole world too, and then barely says anything, and everyone's talking to him. So it's really funny, as you would expect. And I don't typically play turn-based RPGs, which is probably the reason and why it was holding me back so many years from playing this. So I think I played it maybe 2 years after it came out. So let's say like 2015, 2016 or something like that. There's a reason why this one is on this list. I gave it a 9 out of 10. I played it from start to finish, got all the achievements, totally worth it. There's a good bit of missables in here though. So you probably, if you don't kind of pay attention to it, you probably have to play through it at least twice, which is fine. I mean, it's still a great game, but this also actually was ported to the Xbox One and PS4. It was just kind of like I think it was just more or less a port, not really a remake or anything like that. But if you pre-ordered the Fractured Butthole, you would get this one for free on Xbox One. You know, really great story in this one too. All your favorite characters, you know, if you are a fan of South Park. Good length for an RPG as well. I think it was like 15 to 20 hours, you know, depending on if you play it once or twice. So in my opinion, this is a must play, even if you don't like RPGs. All right, let's move on here to the next game, and I'm going to put it in front of the camera here, and you can in unison say Hidden Gem. I know you want to say it, because that's what everyone says, Hidden Gem. Maybe not as much anymore, but this is, of course, Enslaved Odyssey to the West. This came out in 2010, and it was developed by Ninja Theory. So obviously behind Heavenly Sword on the PS3, and later on Hellblade, which is great. I still have yet to play Heavenly Sword, actually. We just bought it not long ago, maybe a couple of months ago, so I'm looking forward to playing that one. But yeah, Enslaved is definitely an interesting game here. I really don't even remember why I bought this game. Maybe I played the demo, because back then I did actually download quite a bit of demos from Xbox 360 and or the marketplace or whatever, and it kind of determined if I wanted to play it. I kind of had moved on from just going to a game store and picking up games at that point, but I wasn't watching a lot of reviews and everything, but in contrast to Rage, where I was more or less like, oh, creators of Doom and Quake, you know, and I picked it up. But Enslaved, I think I played the demo and I was impressed by it. So again, probably was looking for more of an action-adventure, platformer type game, because at the time I was playing a lot of shooters and everything. From having played now a couple of Ninja Theory games, and, you know, if I even take DMC out of the equation here, definitely focusing on storytelling first, and maybe the gameplay is a little bit secondary. And I could be wrong here. I'm certainly not a Ninja Theory expert, but I do like the games that I played of theirs. And certainly the biggest part about this game is really the story and the relationship between Monkey and Trip. So, absolute standout again. I think I've used standout quite a bit in this video, but that's okay. And you know, it kind of starts out as that typical tense, strained relationship, two polar opposite people, and it kind of evolves into this, you know, friendship, mutual respect. You know, that's kind of the whole purpose of this. You know, she needs him to help her and has this like bracelet around him that kind of controls him, you know, to do certain things. And yeah, it makes for a very interesting combination. For that alone, I think it is worth going along that journey, because it is very enjoyable, and just how they develop this friendship and how they develop this relationship. And as I mentioned, you know, gameplay is still great, but, you know, it still feels kind of more secondary. There's a lot of hand-holding, I feel. You know, it's a very simple combat. I do appreciate that they sprinkled in some stealth in there from time to time. So that was a nice little touch. But otherwise, yeah, if you have certain combat scenarios, it's very easy to kind of use the same buttons over and over again, and like the platforming section is kind of the yeah, that is where most of the hand holding is, where I don't even know if you can die during those sections. I'm not quite sure, but even going back and playing it a little bit recently. I don't think I died a single time on the platform. You can certainly die in combat and everything. And this game also had DLC, so you meet this character called Pigsy in the main game, but it has different type of gameplay. So I think you're more sniping and shooting stuff in that one, so definitely worth checking out. I do think it's still available, at least on Xbox 360, the newer store, but otherwise definitely worth playing this one. You won't regret it. Definitely one of the better action adventure story games that I played on the Xbox 360. Let's move on to the next game, and dare I say, maybe the only one on this list that is a little bit underrated, and that is Red Faction Armageddon. This is by Volition and published by THQ. I think this is before they went under, and then they got revived later on. And Sci-Fi Games, I didn't even know that was a thing. I know that it's a channel, but I didn't know it was a game publisher or whatever too. And the reason why I say underrated is because, I don't watch every single video out there, but I certainly don't feel like people talk about Red Faction Armageddon as much as they talk about Red Faction Guerrilla. And I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I thought it was really fun. That's what's at the center of video games. They're supposed to be fun, right? So, there's only one thing I can say that sums up Red Faction Armageddon versus Guerrilla. If you want a part-time job on top of your full-time job, you play Red Faction Guerrilla because it feels like a chore. I think I gave that game a 7 out of 10. I know that's going to be controversial considering I gave Armageddon a 9 out of 10, but I'm not here to pit those two games against each other. I still enjoyed playing Guerrilla, but as a whole, as like a completion platinum, it was a pain. I really don't miss playing that game. This one though, when I picked it up again, it's so much fun. It's very easy to pick up as well. They focus a lot more on just the weapons in this game, your abilities, and progressing the story. There's just not a lot of filler in this one. So if you are looking for not a lot of BS side missions that you have to do and stuff, this is a great game to play. Like, great, easy game to pick up. Guns are amazing too. I played maybe 20 minutes of this game just to capture gameplay and everything, and I was like demolishing everything. I got different types of weapons, and it was so much fun. That's really what it's all about. And when you kind of get to some of the underground levels and everything, and I'm not saying this is like it, but it feels sort of like more of a Dead Space-ish without being like a horror game. And then also maybe a little bit of Lost Planet in there too. Of course, it still feels like a Red Faction Volition game, but they sprinkled in some stuff in there too that made it feel like an entirely different game. So for me, this was kind of the perfect game to pick up when I had played, the likes of Dead Space and maybe some other third-person shooters like Gears and stuff. So it's not going to win any Game of the Year awards or anything like that, and it certainly never did, but I think it was a little bit overlooked as well. It also had like an online horde mode you could play with friends or randoms, like that happens, right? Like I played with a ton of randoms back in the day, so I don't know how populated this game is these days, but you certainly have that option. But I think it's up to like 4 people, and it's pretty fun, destruction, enemies, different weapons and everything. And it also had like a story DLC, well worth it if you want to experience like a different side of the overall story in the Red Faction games. If you have no prior experience with these games, you'll love Red Faction Armageddon. But if you compare it to Red Faction Guerrilla, if you are a big fan of that game, you might not like the linear gameplay and the fact that you get less freedom in this one. So for me personally, I think this game was loads of fun. I highly recommend it at least. So let's call this one an underrated gem. Okay, we're getting close to the end here. And this next game is, I really enjoyed these 2 games, but obviously this is a sequel, and that is The Darkness 2. And this came out in 2012. This is the limited edition, which I'll show you guys here when I open it. This was made by a different developer this time, not Starbreeze, I think, who made the first Darkness game. But this was made by Digital Extremes, which you may know from Dark Sector, another really good game. I really enjoyed Dark Sector. I thought that was a really good game. And also Warframe, of course. And this one came with a poster, which it actually looks like I think I had this on my wall for a while. It's a pretty cool poster because it's a little bit fluffy at this point, so I definitely did that. But yeah, this came in the limited edition, which I think there may have been another edition for it too. Darkness 2 is, I would say, very different from the first Darkness game, which I have covered on this channel in a different video. Thoroughly enjoyed that one too. This one though felt different. There was something improved about this one, and it put a lot more emphasis on gameplay. Not to say that the story isn't great in this one too, but the gameplay took it up like 5 notches or more. You know, it's you know, and it shows. It really shows that they spent a lot of time on actually improving that, because it's probably one of my only complaints about the first game was that I felt like the gameplay in that one was a little bit clunky. It's kind of like you were on ice skating a little bit, and like the aiming wasn't the best, but definitely felt amazing in this one. And the story in Darkness 2 follows it's a couple of years after the ending of the first game, where you are now the head of the mob, and someone calls a hit on you, and that's kind of how the game starts and everything. So you have to be dragged out of this restaurant. Awesome graphics as well. They did change up the graphics in this one's more of a cell shaded graphic style. And again, fantastic voice acting, and Darkness powers in this one feel amazing as well. They're way improved from the first game as well. Obviously, very brutal, very gory game. There's no doubt about that. Again, another M-rated game, so if you have issues with blood or all sorts of things flying everywhere, then yeah, this one cranked that up to the maximum as well. I think in general, both Darkness games are really good games in their own way, and I understand if people only like one or the other, because they are very different. So if you're like more of the slow-paced, kind of more focus on the story, you'll probably like Darkness 1 better. I probably rated the first Darkness like an 8 out of 10, and this one would be a 9 out of 10 for me, just based on the gameplay and all the improvements that they made. I think they even changed out a couple of the voice actors as well, which certainly didn't make the game any worse. And it also has like an interesting like co-op campaign where you can obviously play it offline by yourself, but you could play it online with other people, maybe even up to 4. Like around this time, like 4-player online co-op was very very popular, I guess. Anytime you can have some sort of, you know, local or online co-op versus multiplayer or competitive multiplayer, I prefer that because I'm not the biggest fan of multiplayer anyway. So it's very few games. I can probably count on one hand how many online multiplayer games that I've actually enjoyed through and through. You know, it was a little bit lackluster, I feel, in the first one. So co-op missions though are pretty decent. So as much as I liked the first Darkness game, this one is indeed far better, especially since the gameplay improved so much. Also the graphical style changing is again another standout. Overall, you should definitely check out the Darkness 2. It is a great first-person shooter. Okay, the moment has come, the last game of today's video. And this is a much talked about game, and at the time when I bought this game, it certainly wasn't as talked about as it is now, and that is Spec Ops: The Line. Not to be confused by Conflict Denied Ops, and then everyone's like, what game? But yeah, Spec Ops: The Line. This is certainly a very fascinating one, because I don't know if this is the reason why FOMO went through the roof last year, but I thought I had remembered or seen that people were talking about Spec Ops: The Line at the time, and yeah, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, that obviously it was removed from the digital marketplace, and that people went nuts about this game and had to get it. And I don't even know how expensive this got at some point. It certainly wasn't when I bought my copy for, I don't know, whenever that was, 2014 maybe, and I actually played it, and hopefully people have actually played this game too. And I know that many have talked about this game as, you know, hidden gem, underrated, all that stuff. One of those games that I downloaded the demo for and I played it, and I was like, okay, you know, I like third-person shooters, you know, and I'm wanting to play something else, you know, something different. In the demo, you didn't get a feel for the story as much, you know. It seemed like just like every other third-person shooter at the time, you know, especially in 2012 when this game came out. And this is based on a short novel by Joseph Conrad. It's called Heart of Darkness. I've actually read that one and I found it really boring. Like, it wasn't very long, but yeah, I do, or used to at least, read a lot of books, and I decided to read that one because I had watched Apocalypse Now, and I had also played Far Cry 2, which is also based on Heart of Darkness, and Far Cry 2 totally sucks in almost every way. You're really better off playing this game, and I'll explain why. And if you defend Far Cry 2, I'd love to know why. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Far Cry 2. So let's talk about Spec Ops: The Line. Didn't know anything about it. I went into this blindly thinking it was just, another third-person shooter, cover shooter. It's really the story and the acting in this one too. You have the main character who is voiced by Nolan North. I think actually this is one of his better roles. He does a really good job in this one too of, feeling like he is the hero, and then you don't quite know if he is the hero of the story, and it's very fascinating. I love the way that they laid out this relationship he has with his teammates, or his squad mates that are starting to kind of something's up with this guy kind of thing. So you can also say if people don't care about that kind of character development, they're like, I just want to have a third-person shooter, they probably will miss a lot of the little nuances that are going on, the little conversations, the little side conversations, and the moral choices you have to make throughout this game. In terms of the gameplay though, I will agree with what a lot of people have said about it. It does feel like it's just kind of your standard cover shooter, and it definitely feels like a cover shooter, because if you stand out in the open too long, you will definitely get downed very quickly. You definitely get ambushed and sniped a lot in this game, I feel, where normally you'd think it's safe to progress, and suddenly like an enemy spawns and kills you in a couple shots. So I think the gunplay is decent, so it's not terrible or anything. I've definitely played third-person shooters that are way worse than this one, but I think if this was a step above, I probably would have rated this game a 10 out of 10 just for the overall experience. Maybe not as much replay value after playing through it once or twice, but I still think it's a very memorable experience, and I definitely recommend going through it if you can get your hands on this game. However, I will mention, if you are the type of person to go for platinums, all the achievements, the full completion and stuff, the harder difficulties you choose in this game, the more you will start to dislike it. And if you remember Rage Quit by Achievement Hunter, that's pretty much how it is for the most part in this game. There's some levels that feel incredibly unfair. To unlock Fubar, you have to play it on the second highest difficulty, I think, and then you unlock Fubar, so you would have to do 2 playthroughs. But yeah, incredibly unfair. But if you don't care about difficulty achievements and that sort of thing, you will thoroughly enjoy this game if you're looking for a different type of shooter, story-wise at least. That's going to be it for today, and I hope you enjoyed and found it helpful. These are all titles I would highly recommend to anyone starting or adding to their Xbox 360 collection. Great games to play any day of the week. And if you enjoy what we're doing here, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a like. It goes a long way in YouTube recommending our videos to a bigger audience. Thanks for watching, and as always, keep the 360 dream alive.